So I'll be sharing with you some of the lessons I learned and my experience doing my first ever Hyrox competition in Brisbane last week in the men's pro division, age 35 to 39 age bracket. Again, my first ever Hyrox competition, men's solo. And so if you're looking at doing your very first Hyrox competition and want some tips, advice based on my experience, this video is going to lay it out all for you. To give you some context, I was in the same division competing up against Hunter McIntyre, who's currently world #1 in Hyrox, and Ricky Gerard, who's currently #7 in the world in CrossFit. So he's come from the CrossFit world. And so there was quite a bit of competition in my division last week, to say the least. Also as well, I should mention that my mother passed away 2 weeks before my competition, and I was really close to canceling the event. I just wasn't in the right mental frame of mind to deal with the competition, at all. I just was thinking about other things. And then I decided to continue with the competition. And then 1 week prior to competing, my second mother passed away, Helen, who was like, my best mate's mother, and I used to go to my best mate's house almost every weekend, and she treated me like another son. And yeah, she passed away, 1 week before competing. So I was not in the right emotional place to compete. And after that happened, I was most definitely going to cancel the competition. I just wasn't ready for it mentally. And then I decided that I should just go and do the competition in Brisbane and just do my best. My initial ambition after 12 weeks of getting ready for this competition and following a very vigorous 12-week preparation, a program that I wrote myself, was I wanted to achieve a sub 70-minute time total and hopefully achieve a world championship qualifier. Now, after losing 2 people, I realized that those 2 goals were not probably going to happen, and I thought I should just recalibrate myself and just do the event and be glad that I complete the event. So that's exactly what I did. I just did the event, and my time was terrible. And I'll talk about my time and my results and some advice and things as we move through the video. Yeah, it was a very, very tough event emotionally for me. So I have a background in strength and conditioning and bodybuilding and Muay Thai kickboxing. I've been training for close to 10 years. I run a fitness business online. I coach guys online to get into the best shape of their lives. So my specialty is helping guys lose fat, build muscle, and get stronger and have more confidence. And so that's all on my website and coaching down below in the link. So that's my background. I don't have a background in endurance sports or competitive endurance events like half marathons, triathlons, and things of that nature. So Hyrox falls into that category of being a strength endurance event, and so we'll talk more about that in a second. But you clicked on this video because you're probably interested in doing your first ever Hyrox competition, and you might not even be sure exactly what it is. And when I tell people that I competed in my first ever Hyrox competition in the men's pro division, the first thing they usually ask is, well, is that CrossFit? Someone else will say, oh, is that Hyrox? What is that? And I said, well, it's not Hyrox. It's Hyrox, and it's a fitness race. And the easiest way of explaining it is that it's essentially a strength, endurance, fitness race for everybody. It's 8 kilometers total running, okay, which if you're watching from the US, that's about 4.9 to 5 miles total. That's about 8 kilometers in total, split up into 1 kilometer runs with 8 stations. Essentially, think of it like this. You're doing 8 kilometers of running, but there's these obstacles in the way which you have to complete. Those obstacles are your functional training stations. So I'll break it down for you. You do your first 1 kilometer run at the start tunnel. So at the very beginning of the race, that's it. You're in the start tunnel, you're about to kick it off. You do 1 kilometer and then you run straight into a ski erg station. You do a 1,000-meter ski erg. Then you do another 1 kilometer run, and then you do the sled push, and then you do another 1 kilometer run, and then you do a sled pull, and then you do another 1 kilometer run, and then you do burpee broad jumps, and then you do another 1 kilometer run, and so on and so forth. And then the very last station is wall balls. You have to do 100 wall balls, and then you run across the finish line, and then you get a total time. How long did all of that take you to complete from start to finish? That's Hyrox. So Hyrox is, it's accommodating for people that are professional athletes. You know, so when I was competing against professional, semi-professional and amateur athletes, triathletes, and people that are just starting a fitness journey are also doing Hyrox, typically in the open division. So if you're watching this as a male, then you can do maybe the men's open division, which is more or less for open fitness divisions or all fitness levels. So if you're just starting a fitness journey and you're not sure about Hyrox and whether you can do it or not, I think doing the open division is a good first place to start. And then from there, you can determine later on if you want to do a pro division, or maybe you want to do a doubles. You don't want to do the whole thing on your own. You want to share it with a partner. They got mixed doubles, they've got relay, they've got all sorts of things. So go check out their website. But I wanted to go in there and just do the men's pro solo. I want to do this all on my own, and I'm glad I did it. Essentially, you go in there and it's all age bracketed. So, 18 to 24, 25 to 29 year olds, 30 to 34, 35 to 39. So I was in the 35 to 39 year old age bracket. And then you got this group called the Elite 15. And so the Elite 15 is the top 15 fastest Hyrox athletes on earth. And they compete in the special Elite 15 division at the World Championships. So for me, going into this and getting ready for my first Hyrox competition, I wanted to qualify for the World Championships, and I really wanted to get into that Elite 15. I know it was overly ambitious and borderline audacious, but I think given that I lost 2 people in my life, that wasn't going to happen, so I had to downgrade my ambitions a little bit. So Hyrox is not CrossFit, it's a strength endurance race for everybody. So also keep in mind, 50%, thereabouts 50% of this competition is a running race. So one thing that I will talk about later on in this video is the importance of improving your running form and technique. Most of this race, at least half of this race, is running. So if you do the simple math, if you want to finish sub 70 minutes and you're doing a 5 kilometer split time, then you figure out 8 kilometers total, 5 minutes per kilometer, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, thereabouts is going to be running. So you need to really work on your running technique and form and that kind of stuff if you want to do a successful Hyrox. So let's jump into my results and talk about my results. So if you're doing your first ever Hyrox competition, your results will be given to you. You go onto the Hyrox website, you type in your name, you type in the location that you competed in, and it will give you a full breakdown of your results. How long did it take for you to complete each of your runs? How long did it take for you to complete each station, right? And then you can use those numbers to improve your programming for your next Hyrox race. That's exactly what I did. You can also get an app, and I'll talk about that app in a second, called ROXFIT. And so ROXFIT gives you a full breakdown of your results. So my results, 1 hour, 37 minutes. In the men's pro division, 35 to 39. I came 44th in my division. So having a look at the screenshots on your screen now, so you'll see here my overall performance. They give you these little graphs here. So you'll see I was in the bottom 8% overall. So terrible, absolutely not good at all. And then my split times based on each run and each station. Run 1, run 2, run 3, run 4, and so forth. And you'll see here on the right-hand side column, my averages were slower than average. So for example, my wall balls down the bottom there, I was 4 minutes 33 slower than the average. My total wall ball time was 11 minutes. And we'll talk about how terrible I was at those later on, but they were my results. So moving on, so lessons and advice. So number 1, it's a compromised running race. So I knew going into this that this was a running race, essentially an endurance event associated with a lot of running, but I didn't put enough emphasis on it being compromised running. So compromised running, if you're not familiar, just means that you are doing some kind of functional training on your legs, and then immediately following that training, you're doing a run, okay? So your legs are compromised. So your first kilometer in Hyrox is very easy by comparison, because when you start the race, you're doing 1 kilometer of running. Your legs are fresh, they haven't been compromised yet, and so everyone's time in their first run is going to be much faster than every subsequent run. As you do each of these stations, you do the farmer's carry, you're doing the rowing, you're doing the sled push, sled pull, you're really cooking your legs. and then you go straight into a run after you've cooked your legs on a sled push or a sled pull or a burpee broad jump. So that's compromise running. So you really need to focus on compromise running, and I'm giving this advice to myself as well. So things like in training, emphasizing, doing a sled push for 30 meters and then doing a 400 meter run straight away, or doing a 100 meter walking lunge and then doing maybe 800 meters of running straight after, or doing 10 burpee broad jumps and then going straight into 500 meters of running. So you really want to practice running on fatigued legs, because that's going to help you adapt and get used to running with fatigued legs. And when you come to competition, you're going to be much more efficient running on compromised legs. So that's number one. Number two is running out of the gate too fast. So I get the excitement. Now I've done it. The energy is hot. The music's pumping. The crowd is cheering. You got photographers, you got media, you've got all sorts of things going on. And you've been practicing and training hard for this event, and then come to the crunch, you're about to kick off the event. And the biggest mistake that I learned that people make, going into their first competition, and I was aware of this before I did my competition, was they come out the gate too fast. They're just too pumped and they sprint. They sprint that first kilometer and then they jump straight into a ski erg and they just cook themselves too much. They spike their heart rate. They get to the second run and they run a little slower. Then they start to get slower and slower and slower because they've used all their energy at the front end of the race in the first 1 to 2 kilometers, in the first 1 or 2 stations. So for me, I went in drilling into my head that I will not run faster than a 4-minute kilometer in my first run, and that my ski erg time would be 3 minutes and 42. For 1,000 meters. I said to myself, and I drilled this in training, that 4-minute kilometer for the first run, and then 3 minutes 42 at best for my ski erg time. And I'm going to drill this transition in training. And I drilled it and drilled it and drilled it and drilled it and drilled it. And you know what happened on race day? I still came out a little bit too hot, but not as hot as some of the other guys. So I was a little bit more controlled, but I could have been more controlled. And it was my first race, and I wasn't used to the hype and the roar of the crowd and I was feeding off that a little bit, right? So, but just keep that in mind. The biggest mistake people make is they come out too hot in the first kilometer. I use my watch, my Garmin watch, to help time my pace. And if I was running a little bit too hot, I tried to slow down a little bit. And this watch helped me tremendously. Next one is number 3, focus on sled work and wall balls. So for me, what I noticed when I was doing my first comp was that everybody was on fire until they got to the sled push, and everybody came to a grinding halt. The carpet, for some reason, in the competition has a higher friction. I think it's called friction quotient, but it has a lot more friction than the carpet used in the gyms that I trained in. So next time I'm going to practice with more weight on my sled push and more weight on my sled pull, because that friction, the carpet was much more, had more friction than what I was used to in training. On top of that, the sled pull, okay, I didn't know that I could chalk my hands while doing the sled pull. So I got to the sled pull. I think I got there first because there was no one else there. I was the first one at the sled pull. And I started pulling on the rope, and the rope is not only very elastic, right? I feel like I'm pulling an elastic band. So you got to pull the slack out of the rope a little bit. And then also as well, to stop your hands from slipping, you need to use some kind of chalk because you're sweating a lot from having done the 1 kilometer run leading into it. I didn't know that I could use chalk from the chalk bucket, right? I'd already received a warning from one of the head judges because my toes had touched the line, and they're not allowed to touch the line, okay? I didn't realize this because you're in the heat of the moment. And so I received a warning, so that kind of threw me off a little bit. I was a little bit worried that I'd make another mistake and then I get penalized and then maybe get disqualified. So I didn't know I can get chalk to chalk my hands up to get grip, because I was pulling on the rope and I could feel the skin stripping off my hands. It was the most painful thing I've ever done in training, and I've done a lot of hard things in training, but I could see the skin just ripping off my hands like this, and I'm like, this is going to kill me. And the sled pull was only the 3rd station in the whole race. And then when I saw other guys running in behind me, I'm like, oh no, people they're catching up to me. And this really played on my mind, and it made me kind of anxious. So I kept pulling and pulling and pulling. And then I saw someone running to get chalk, and I was like, what's he doing getting chalk? He's left his box. And then I was like, man, and I asked the head judge, I'm like, hey, could I please get some chalk? And he goes, yeah, of course, you can leave the box. And I was like, I didn't know that. So I left the box, I put chalk on my hands, I kept going and I finished it. So one thing is just learning, really. I didn't know that I could chalk my hands up. I didn't know that I could leave that box to get chalk. I thought if I left that box, I'd get another penalty, another warning, and then get disqualified. So I wasted probably 7 or 8 minutes fearing that I, was going to get disqualified just because I didn't know I could get chalk, and that changed everything. Once I got chalk, I was like, oh man, this is so much easier with chalk. So that's just something that I learned being a first timer, is you can definitely make the most of the chalk, because that rope is very slippery and you want to chalk your hands up. And once you chalk your hands up, you want to pull the slack out of that rope, because that rope is it's like an elastic band. You really want to pull the slack out of that rope, and that will help you pull the sled. But yeah, that was a hard one, and next time I know better. So the wall balls was the hardest one for me. I didn't really practice the wall balls as much as what I should have. It's the very last station. You have to do 100 wall balls, and the guy next to me doing wall balls threw up all over the place. He was vomiting everywhere. And it really threw me off. I was like, oh boy, this guy, he's just throwing up everywhere. This guy's, can't believe this. And like right next to me, about a meter away from me in the next box, this guy was throwing up. I was like, okay, I just gotta focus. And then I kept throwing the ball and I kept missing the cross. So when I was doing a little bit of wall ball training, I didn't put a mark on the wall that I should have to hit a mark on the wall, because my accuracy hitting the cross was wrong. It was not right. So I missed a lot of reps because I threw the ball up, but it just didn't hit the cross. And the girl behind me that was counting was like, you need to hit the cross, you need to hit the cross, you need to hit the cross. I'm like, I'm trying. I got really fatigued doing that. So I think I spent like 11 minutes longer than what I should have doing wall balls. But next time I'm gonna definitely drill those wall balls and become a master at those. Focus on your sled work and wall balls, because they are very challenging if you don't hit them hard in training. The fourth one is running form and efficiency. So because I don't have a background in running, as you know, my background is in lifting and strength and conditioning training and Muay Thai kickboxing. I really had to work on my running technique. So I was filming myself running on a treadmill and looking at how far I'm leaning forward, that I need to lean back more, I need to have more arm drive, I need to ensure that I'm getting this midfoot strike, my breathing, my pacing, my cadence. I reverse engineered everything I was doing with my running, everything I was doing wrong, and I worked really hard at improving the biomechanics of my running, watching a ton of YouTube videos, filming myself running on a treadmill, correcting myself, and I really did, make improvements there. I went from like 5.5, 6 minute split times down to around 3.5 to 4 minute split times during the duration of my 12 weeks of preparation. But I didn't do enough compromise running, okay? So I did a little bit of compromise running in training, which is what we talked about before, but I just didn't do enough of it. Doing burpee broad jumps straight into a run, doing sandbag lunges or walking lunges straight into a run, doing a sled push straight into a run, this straight into a run. So compromise running. You really have to prioritize it. So that's something I'll be bringing to the table next time, is more compromise running in my training for the next Hyrox event, and also improving my aerobic capacity, just doing more volume each week in my running. I just didn't do enough volume. I think I did maybe 20-25 kilometers a week running. I just didn't do enough. These elite athletes are doing 40, 50, 60 kilometers a week. I didn't do anywhere near that. So I need to add more volume into my running and incorporate more zone 2 running, 3 times a week, 60-minute sessions at a pace of around 5 to 5.5 minute kilometers, and then more tempo running, so 3 to 5 kilometers at around 4.5 minute kilometers to really boost my lactate threshold levels. So more a combination of increasing my aerobic capacity and improving my tempo runs, those two combined. So that's just a little message for myself. You guys are doing this for the first time, you really got to bump your running up. Get a running program somewhere off the internet, compromise running. You got to get used to running on legs that are cooked and fatigued. Next one is number 5, ski erg and rowing efficiency. My ski erg and rowing form and technique was really bad when I first started. I spent a lot of time filming myself doing the ski erg and filming myself doing the rowing and looking at the biomechanics of those two exercises. So I really worked on improving my rowing technique and rowing efficiency and my ski erg technique. Initially, my rowing strokes per minute was somewhere around 40-45 strokes a minute, really high. And I got that down to around 26 to 30 strokes per minute for the same split times. So I really worked on improving my stroke rate, getting more power per stroke. So really improving my stroke efficiency by improving the biomechanics of how I'm executing a row. So I was watching a lot of videos on YouTube on like rowing form and rowing technique from like ex-Olympic rowers and just learning everything I could about how to row correctly, specific to the Concept 2 rower, okay? So not rowing out on the river, but actually rowing on a machine. I believe they're just different techniques, right? But I spent a lot of time working on rowing form and technique to get my, as I said, my strokes per minute down to around 26 to 32 strokes per minute, which is what the elite athletes are doing. The elite athletes in Hyrox are doing around 135 to 145 500 meter split times. I really worked hard to try and get close to that. I think I got to around 150, 155 per 500 meter split times on the rower. So I really did improve my rowing over 12 weeks, and my ski erg strokes per minute was around 70, really high. But I knew the elite athletes' stroke rates were around sort of somewhere between 32 to 35 strokes a minute. So I really worked hard to get my stroke efficiency up for both ski erg and rowing. And that really did help me in the race. But, you know, it wasn't as good as the elite athletes, but I really did work hard. And over the 12 weeks of prep, I really did improve on those two functional movements. You know, I really did make a lot of progress there, but this is a matter of time. It's going to take a little bit more time to get better at these movements, right? So next one is keeping a training journal, number 6. So I talk about this with my clients. You know, if you're watching this as one of my online clients, I always talk about keeping a training record somewhere, whether you use an app or you write it down somewhere. My entire Hyrox training, everything from nutrition to training to my numbers to how I felt to all sorts of things I keep in this book here. And I've essentially recorded every single training session here, what my goals are, what my ambition is, what I want to achieve, and then all my numbers. So I can see here, you know, very clearly, I've had intention with my training, and you've got to be intentional with your training. You don't just go to the gym and just tick a box. You want to go in there with a very specific purpose and plan. I teach this with my clients all the time online. It's like, if you keep a journal, you can go back and say, all right, I did this, and you know, with my, for example, sled push, for me, a 60 kilo sled push, 80 kilo sled, 120, 140, 160. If I look through my later records, I can see here that my sled push is up to 240, 250, 260 kilos. And I can see just how much I've improved just by one station by having a training record. So always keep training records somewhere. I can see my running, my pace here, my average pace for running when I first started. My Hyrox prep on the 13th of December last year was around 5:53, 5 minutes 53, 5 minutes 57, 6 minutes 3. That was my running pace when I first started. My average running pace for a 1 kilometer distance was that. Then I got it down to close to 3:57, 3:46, 3:43, right? That was my running. So I shaved off minutes off my running pace just in the 12-week training block. But because I have a training record, I'm able to make those comparisons. You've got to keep a training record. Number 7 is learn the movement standards. So I did spend quite a bit of time looking at the rules and the rule book and the technical briefings. So there's some videos on the Hyrox YouTube channel where you can learn the technical briefings for the pro division. I think the singles and the doubles, they've got their own technical briefings. Watch those videos, study those videos, take notes, learn the rules of because every season, I believe they change the rules slightly. You really want to become familiar with the rules. so that you don't get penalized. I received a warning, but you know, I know better next time, right? Don't put your toes on the white line. Okay, cool, I get that. So make sure that you watch the videos and you understand the rules and thoroughly. Make sure you read those rules, you know, many times. Because if you get penalties, they give you just lose time, right? You lose time. Next one is get the ROXFIT app. So I didn't know this until after I finished my competition. There's an app called ROXFIT. It's a free app, and you can look up your race results and you can see how much you've improved from your previous race. It also, you know, gives you training plans and that kind of stuff. And if you go down to the bottom here, it says improvement plan. I'll show you the screenshot. So you see here my current time for my first race was 1 hour 37. And then my goal is, say for example, you know, 1 hour 10. So just I want to get 70 minutes. I want my goal time for my next Hyrox race to be 70 minutes. And then it gives me an improvement plan of where I need to improve on each station to try and hit that 70-minute finish time. So it says here my running. I need to improve my running by a 1 minute kilometer. Right, so my average run per kilometer needs to be reduced by 1 minute, and my wall balls need to be improved by 5 minutes 35, and my rowing needs to be improved by 19 seconds. My ski erg needs to be improved by 1 second. It just gives you a really good place where you can build or adjust your training program based on the suggestions it gives you in the app. So I highly recommend getting the ROXFIT app. The last one is enjoying the experience. You know, I didn't enjoy the experience as much as what I would have liked, because, you know, losing 2 people right up before the competition was really playing on my mind leading into the competition. And even during the race, I was kind of thinking about that a little bit. But I think all that aside, you know, if you're going there, just really try and soak up the event. It is a phenomenal event. The community is awesome. The crowds are awesome. Very supportive people. You know, I went there on my own. And so like the energy and the vibe is incredible. The music's pumping. There's thousands of people there. It's just such an awe-inspiring place where you've got all sorts of people that are competing at all different levels of fitness, from beginners to elite athletes. You've got someone just starting a fitness journey over here to like #1 in the world, all competing under the same roof in an indoor event. It's just a phenomenal event. So I think at the end of the day, you know, with your first Hyrox event, I wouldn't worry about your finish time. I was worried about my finish time before my mother passed away. And then when she passed away, I was like, you know what, I'm just happy if I just finish the event. I think in all cases, your first Hyrox event, don't worry about your finish time. Just go in there, complete it, learn from it, and then improve for the next one. And that's all you can really do. Use the improvement plan section of the ROXFIT app to make adjustments to your program if you want to do another Hyrox event. At the end of the day, guys, I just suggest go to the Hyrox website, click on events, find out where your nearest event Hyrox competition is going to be held. They're all over the world, from Paris to London, New York, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth. They're everywhere. And so, you know, just book the event, book a photography package, which is what I did. I paid a little bit extra to get a photographer to take high quality professional photos of me. And why not? You spend so much time and effort training and getting ready for the event. Why not showcase your hard work by having some really nice photos that you can look back on in the future? So if you have any questions, if you're going to do this Hyrox event for the first time, let me know in the comments below. Send me a message if you have any questions. And if you're interested in online fitness coaching, I'll link it up down below. I help guys just starting a fitness journey that want to lose fat, build muscle, and get into the best shape of their lives. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.